we have all experienced this incredibly specific frustration, right? You're working with a state-of-the-art AI.
Oh, yeah. The absolute cutting edge.
Exactly. And maybe you're having it, I don't know, help you analyze a massive stack of financial documents, or you're world building for a novel, or maybe you're just having a really long, nuanced conversation.
Right. And it feels like magic at first.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's tracking with you. It's brilliant. It's, connecting all the dots. And then out of nowhere, you ask it a question that relies on a detail you gave it like 20 minutes ago.
And you realize the lights are on, but nobody is home.
Exactly. It just completely hallucinates the answer. I mean, it just forgot.
It's basically the glaring Achilles heel of modern artificial intelligence. I mean, we have built models with just astonishing processing power, right?
Yeah.
But giving them a robust, reliable, long-term memory that actually holds up over massive sequences of information is, well, it's still an unsolved puzzle.
Yeah.
They just suffer from these sudden, catastrophic bouts of amnesia.
Which is exactly our mission for today. So welcome to the Deep Dives. We are taking a hard look at the fundamental memory problem in modern AI and, more importantly, a potential cure.
A very promising one, actually.
Yeah, because today we are unpacking a highly technical, brand new research paper by Liebemeyer-Horbatko. It's titled Sessa, Selective State-Space Attention.
Right.
And the author is pitching this completely reimagined architectural blueprint for how AI models route information. Like, Sessa claims it can fundamentally rewire the brain of an AI to stop it from forgetting.
But I should say the paper itself is incredibly dense. I mean, it is heavily grounded in system dynamics, network geometry, complex mathematical proofs.
It's a lot of math.
It is. But the core concepts here, the actual structural changes it proposes for artificial memory, are profound. It really forces us to completely rethink how an AI, experiences sequence data.
And my promise to you, the listener, is that even though our source material is just packed to the brim with complex equations, we are going to extract the real aha moments together.
We'll translate the calculus into concepts, basically.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can truly appreciate why Sessa is causing such a stir, we have to look at the scoreboard as it stands today, right? We need to understand the two reigning champions of AI architecture and exactly why they fail when the context gets too long. So, contender number one, transformers.
Right, so transformers are the engine behind almost every major language model you interact with today. And a really useful lens the Sessa paper provides is to look at these models strictly based on how they route information from the past.
Okay, how do they do it?
Well, transformers use what the author terms an input-dependent direct read mechanism. So when a transformer wants to understand the word it is currently processing, it looks back at every single word that came before it, all at once.
Wow. Every single word.
Yeah, it computes its relevance in a single sweeping pass.
It uses self-attention. But the paper points out a fatal flaw here, right? This phenomenon called dilution.
Yes, spatial dilution.
Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to listen to a choir. If it's a 10-person choir, you can probably pick out the tenors, the sopranos, maybe even hear an individual voice if you really focus.
Sure.
But what if that choir scales up to 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, or 100,000? If everyone is singing a slightly different tune and your brain is trying to give direct attention to all of them simultaneously, individual voices just become a wash of noise.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is that the mathematical reality of that dilution is just brutal.
How so?
Well, the paper demonstrates that when a model's attention is spread across a massive amount of tokens, the voices in your choir analogy, the influence of any single specific token drops proportionally to how widely the model is splitting its focus.
So it just gets spread too thin.
Exactly. As your context window grows to hundreds of thousands of words, the attention mass is just stretched to its absolute limit across competing inputs. It is fundamentally a spatial failure. You're looking at an enormous landscape, but you lose the ability to spot the vital, tiny details.
A spatial failure. Okay, so the detail washes out because you're looking at too much at once. That makes sense. So if transformers dilute their memory, what about the other heavyweight champion? Mamba.
Right, Mamba.
These use an entirely different structure, right? Structured state-space models.
Yeah, state-space models basically abandon the look at everything all at once approach. Instead, they use explicit feedback loops or chain-structured recurrence.
Okay, what does that actually mean in practice?
It means information is propagated step by step. It's passed sequentially through an internal, constantly updating state. It is incredibly efficient from a computational standpoint because the model doesn't have to constantly look backward at the entire history.
Right.
It just processes the current moment and updates its running summary.
Okay, I picture Mamba like a massive bucket brigade trying to put out a fire. You have this long line of people passing a bucket of water down the line. It's fast, it's efficient, and it doesn't require everyone to keep looking back at the water source.
That's spot on.
But it has its own massive vulnerability, which the paper calls exponential forgetting. Because, I mean, if even one person in that long chain gets distracted or trips and drops the bucket, the water is gone forever. You can't just get it back.
You really can't. And the mechanics of how that bucket gets dropped are fascinating. For an AI like Mamba to remember a specific, crucial piece of information from early in the sequence, it essentially has to mathematically clamp its internal gates shut.
It has to lock it in.
Exactly. It has to freeze time for that specific memory, protecting it from being overwritten as new data flows in.
Yeah.
And the paper models this rigorously. If the AI fails to perfectly freeze that state, if the gate leaks even a tiny bit as thousands of new tokens are processed, the signal of that distant information vanishes exponentially fast.
It just drops off a cliff.
Literally drops off a cliff.
Wow. Okay, so if we step back and look at the bigger picture here, we are trapped between two complementary failure modes. With transformers, we suffer from spatial dilution. We look at everything and the crucial details blur together. And with state space models like Mamba, we rely on a fragile chain and we suffer from temporal attenuation. We pass the details down the line, but they inevitably leak out and succumb to exponential decay.
We either dilute the signal or we drop the bucket.
Which is exactly the problem Sessa was engineered to solve. So how do we build a better bucket?
Well, the core architectural innovation of Sessa is that it takes these two competing ideas and just smashes them together.
Literally combines them.
Yeah. It injects input-dependent attention directly into a recurrent feedback pathway. It's a highly specific structural hybrid. And the paper actually visualizes this beautifully by comparing the routing pathways.
Walk me through that.
So for a standard transformer, moving information from a past word to a current word is one path, one hop. It's a direct single bridge.
Got it.
And for a model like Mamba, it is one path, multi-hop. The information travels straight down the sequential chain, hopping from state to state.
Okay, but Sessa's routing is defined in the paper as many paths, multi-hop.
Exactly. Many paths, multi-hop.
So instead of a single direct read or a strict single chain, Sessa uses this specialized mathematical solver to aggregate information over multiple internal routing depths. Like, past data points influence future states through a dense, overlapping web of pathways.
A web is the perfect way to describe it.
So wait, I have to push back on this concept because, I mean, if Sessa is taking attention mechanisms and bouncing them around inside a repeating feedback loop, doesn't that just become a massive liability?
How so?
I'm picturing someone putting a microphone too close to a speaker. You get that chaotic echo chamber where the sound just spirals and amplifies until the system absolutely screeches.
Oh, yeah. That runaway feedback loop is the exact danger inherent in recurrent systems. If you allow past information to continuously re-inject itself without strict controls, the numbers just explode.
And bottle crashing.
Right, it completely crashes. But the author of the Sessa paper anticipates this and dedicates a huge, significant portion of the math to proving the stability of this new web.
Okay, so how do you build a web that absorbs echoes without, amplifying them into a screech?
You introduce a mathematical governor, basically a strict dampener on the feedback. Sessa modulates its internal echoes using a specific gain that is rigorously bounded.
Like kept within a limit.
Yes, specifically between -1 and 1. The system is mathematically constrained so that the total amplification of any signal can never exceed its original input.
Oh, wow.
The technical proof shows that the internal echoes remain fundamentally stable, bounded output stable, to be precise. The system absorbs the history smoothly. Information cascades through the web, bouncing through multiple paths, but it is mathematically guaranteed never to spiral out of control.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because we know Sessa's architecture looks like this intricate overlapping web, and we know it won't crash. But does it actually retain memory better?
It does.
Because the paper doesn't just theorize about this, right? It proves the exact mathematical decay rates of how these models forget. And we established earlier that Mamba suffers from exponential forgetting. Like when Mamba encounters a bunch of noisy, distracting data, maybe conversational filler or irrelevant code, it loses its grip.
It falls into that failed freeze time regime.
Exactly. The gate leaks and its memory drops off an absolute cliff.
But Sessa, however, is subjected to the exact same harsh, diffuse routing conditions in the paper's proofs. And instead of dropping off a cliff, Sessa admits what the author calls power law memory tails.
Power law memory tails. Okay.
Yeah. To visualize the difference, an exponential decay is a sheer drop. A power law tail is a long, gentle, sweeping ramp.
Okay, put that into a real-world scenario for us. What is the practical difference between an AI with exponential decay and an AI with a power law tail when you ask it to do a massive task?
Okay, imagine you ask an AI to read and analyze a complex 500-page mystery novel. You feed the entire book into its context window. If the model's memory decays exponentially, by the time it reaches page 500, it might have a decent grasp of page 490. But the crucial clue dropped on page 10. It has been mathematically erased.
The cliff was just too steep.
Exactly. The signal has attenuated to absolute zero. A power law tail, however, allows for deep, robust retrieval. Because it's a gentle ramp, the memory trace of page 10 hasn't flatlined. The signal is still active and accessible, even at the very end of the book.
And the mechanism creating that gentle ramp is honestly my favorite part of this paper, because it feels almost paradoxical at first. We talked about how Sessa utilizes many paths, multi-hop, right?
Right.
Well, the paper explains that as the distance between a past memory and a current state grows, the individual connections between them naturally get weaker. But, and this is the absolute genius of the architecture, the number of admissible paths connecting them actually grows.
It is a stunning mathematical balancing act. As you look further back in time, the sheer volume of routes that information can take through the feedback loop multiplies.
Right. And this growing web of pathways perfectly counteracts the dilution of the individual attention weights.
So it's like the individual threads get thinner, but you're weaving so many more of them together that the overall rope stays strong.
That's a brilliant way to put it. And the ultimate result of that strong rope is a capability the paper calls flexible selective retrieval.
Flexible selective retrieval.
Right. Sessa can realize influence profiles that simply do not decay with distance at all. It can mathematically maintain a frozen, perfectly stable memory over a massive horizon, or it can even increase the attention weight of a distant memory if the context actually demands it.
Which, just to be clear, fixed depth transformers and state space models mathematically cannot do under those same conditions.
No, they hit a hard mathematical limit.
But Sessa just keeps spinning new paths. Okay, so we have this sprawling web of information constantly flowing forward, taking multiple routes to get to the present moment. But that actually brings up a really bizarre logistical problem, I think.
If data is taking all these different overlapping routes, just bouncing around the network, how on earth does the AI keep track of the chronological order of the words?
This brings us to what might actually be the most fascinating and, frankly, surprising quirk hidden in the entire paper, Sessa's internal clock, or I should say, how it handles positional encoding.
Right. To give some background here, transformers are notoriously blind to the concept of time. They process the entire sequence at once. So if you don't explicitly stamp a timestamp onto every single word using something like rotary position embeddings or rope E, the model has no idea that the sentence, "the dog bites the man," means something totally different from "the man bites the dog."
Exactly. The words are exactly the same, so without timestamps, the transformer just treats them as identical.
Right. So what does Sessa do?
Well, Sessa does utilize row timestamps in its forward direct read pathway.
Yeah.
But when you look at the complex overlapping feedback branch we've been discussing, the paper reveals something remarkable. Sessa uses absolutely zero explicit positional encoding in that feedback loop. None. It is completely naked data.
This absolutely blew my mind. I mean, it's like imagining someone trying to build a functioning clock without using any gears or springs or batteries, just by, I don't know, pouring water down a jagged hill. How can a mathematical model organically generate a timestamp? How does it know what time it is without us explicitly coding a clock into it?
Well, this raises an important question, right? And it reveals a truly beautiful property of network geometry. The paper proves that Sessa's feedback solver actually writes its own absolute positional signal as a byproduct of its structure.
Just by existing.
Yes. You see, the feedback recurrence aggregates the strict past in one forward temporal direction. It uses a strictly lower triangular operator.
Which is a very technical way of saying what?
It's a highly technical way of saying there is a hard mathematical temporal asymmetry.
Meaning information is only ever allowed to flow downstream. Like, the past can influence the future, but the future can never flow backward to alter the past.
Precisely. And that rigid one-way flow generates a deterministic, position-dependent offset within the data itself. Because the data is being forced through this asymmetrical structure, the model organically maps time simply by experiencing the flow of the sequence.
By experiencing it, wow.
Yeah, it creates a wake, like a boat moving through water. And by analyzing the shape of that wake, the model continuously recovers its exact position in the sequence. It doesn't need us to give it a clock. It feels the passage of time through the accumulation of past states.
Okay, so we have a model that cures spatial dilution through overlapping webs. It cures exponential forgetting with power law ramps, and it organically generates its own sense of chronology.
It's quite a list.
It is. That is a masterpiece of lab theory. But theory only matters if the model actually survives when you take it out of the lab and put it in the ring with the reigning champions. And thankfully, the paper gives us the scoreboard.
It does. And the author was very rigorous here. They ran strictly matched experiments. They kept the parameter count and the computational training budgets absolutely identical across 3 setups: a Sessa mixer, a standard multi-head self-attention transformer, and a Mamba 2 mixer.
So it was a fair apples-to-apples fight?
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at the long context gauntlet first. They tested the models on tasks designed specifically to break their memory. One task was called diffuse MQAR, which tests associative recall over long distances. But the real meat grinder was a task called symbol soup.
Oh, symbol soup is a brutal diagnostic.
Tell us about it.
The task requires the model to find specific hidden styles or patterns that are separated by massive gulfs of completely random, irrelevant noise. It is the ultimate needle in a haystack test. It's basically designed to simulate reading a massive, messy document where 90% of the text is useless filler, but you need to retain the 10% that actually matters to answer the prompt.
Right. And on symbol soup, Sessa absolutely dominated the field. I mean, Sessa hit an 86% accuracy rate.
Which is fantastic.
The transformer models put up a respectable fight, hitting 79%. And Mamba completely collapsed.
It really did.
It scored a 5% accuracy rate.
And we should contextualize that 5%, right?
Oh.
For a classification task like symbol soup, 5% is not just a poor performance. It is effectively random guessing. The model was mathematically blinded.
So why did Mamba fail so catastrophically when the transformer could at least hit 79%?
Comes down to the noise. The sheer volume of random noise in the symbol soup data fundamentally broke Mamba's internal selection signal. Remember the bucket brigade?
Yeah.
Mamba needs to know when to freeze time and hold tightly to the bucket, and when to let the water spill to make room for new, useful information.
Right.
Well, the noise overwhelmed its ability to distinguish the crucial hidden styles from the garbage data. Because it couldn't reliably freeze its state, it fell straight into that exponential forgetting regime we talked about. The memory of the actual important information was entirely wiped out by the noise. It just left it to guess blindly at the end.
But Sessa, dealing with the exact same massive gulfs of random noise, used its many paths web.
Exactly.
The noise weakened the direct connection, sure, but the sheer number of overlapping paths allowed the core signal to ride that gentle power law ramp all the way to the end. It held on to the memory.
It did. However, a truly rigorous paper highlights its weaknesses as well as its strengths. And it was not a clean sweep for Sessa across every conceivable task.
Right, we have to be fair here. They also tested the models on short context sequences using a dataset called simple stories. This is just basic short-form language modeling. Think reading a tweet or like a short email.
Yeah.
And here, Sessa actually lost. The scores are measured in perplexity, where a lower score is better. Transformers hit 7.67, Mamba hit 7.72, and Sessa lagged behind at 8.37.
Right. And the author conducted an ablation study to pinpoint exactly why Sessa underperformed on short text.
An ablation study is where you systematically strip away parts of the model's architecture to see what happens, right?
Exactly. And they found that when you are processing a very short text, you just don't need a massive, intricate web of overlapping feedback paths. A single direct read hop, which is what the transformer does natively, is perfectly sufficient.
So Sessa's massive architectural advantage suddenly becomes dead weight.
Exactly. The complex feedback branch ends up eating up computational capacity that the model could have used for better, immediate language processing. And the proof is that when the researchers completely removed Sessa's feedback branch during those short text ablation tests, its performance immediately improved. It is a highly specialized architecture.
Which really brings us back to the core truth of technology. So what does this all mean? You have to apply the right tool for the job.
Definitely.
If you are building an AI agent specifically to read short customer service queries and generate two-sentence replies, do not use Sessa.
No, stick to transformers. They are hyper-efficient, direct-read machines, perfectly suited for that.
Right. But if you're asking an AI to analyze an incredibly noisy genomic sequence, or comb through years of medical records, or synthesize a 500-page textbook where the clue on page 10 is the only way to solve the mystery on page 490, Sessa is offering a blueprint that fundamentally outclasses the current champions.
Absolutely. Sessa's true value lies in unlocking robust, long-range reasoning over vast, unforgiving information landscapes, because these are the exact landscapes where transformers spread themselves too thin and dissolve into a blur,
Right.
and where Mamba loses its grip and suffers from exponential amnesia. By combining the dynamic routing of attention with the stable accumulation of feedback loops, Sessa points the way toward artificial intelligence with genuine, durable, long-term memory.
We have covered incredible ground today. I mean, we mapped out the spatial failures of massive choirs, the temporal failures of drop buckets, and how twisting those concepts together creates a web that can hold on to a thought through thousands of pages of noise.
It's a huge step forward.
It really is. But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to ponder on your own. Circling back to that gearless clock. Sessa proved that it could organically generate its own internal understanding of time and position, not because a programmer wrote a line of code telling it what time was, but simply through the asymmetric, forward-flowing structure of its many paths feedback loops. The network geometry naturally gave rise to a sense of chronology. So if an AI can develop its own emergent awareness of time just through the physical shape of its architecture, what other fundamental cognitive structures might naturally emerge if we just figure out how to build the right kind of network?
It's a fascinating implication for the future of how these models might grow.
Truly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the memory of machines. Keep asking questions and stay insanely curious.